How's it going, Wildcats? This is the Words to the Wildcat podcast, season 2, episode 4. My name is Tommy Fernandez, and joining me as always is Aurelia Ruiz.
What's up, Wildcats? Thank you so much for joining us here today. Our last episode was themed around communication and conflict resolution, where we had an amazing discussion with CWU alumni and our friend Molly Nutt. And if you're interested in that podcast, please make sure to go check it out.
And that being said, today's episode's theme is on foundations of leadership. We are very excited for this one, and just for listening to today's episode, you can receive credit for earning your Wildcat Leadership Academy certificate by just completing a quick assessment of this episode.
We are very excited to have Anthony Peterson with us today. He's a CWU alumni from graduating class of 2010. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Go Cats.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, Anthony, you've done very well for yourself to get to where you are today. You're a deputy CEO of OIC in Yakima, which is amazing. But let's take a step back. What are some experiences or lessons you learned during your time at Central to kind of help who you are as a person and a leader today?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences at Central that helped me develop as a leader. When I first transferred to Central in 2008 from Eastern Washington University, I had one thought on my mind, just playing football. And education was secondary. But through that experience, getting hurt, things not going the way, I intended it, I realized that I had to do something else. I needed something else to fill that void of being involved, being a leader, being a participant in something else other than just academics. So I decided to join the BSU, and that was kind of what helped jumpstart my my adult leadership journey, if you will, outside of sports. So there I was able to be mentored by great individuals like Dr. Bobby Cummings, Dr. Keith Champagne, Miss Teresa Francis, and other leaders that were just in the BSU in the community, Perry Lomax, some peers, Andre Dickerson, and I was able to just form a community of individuals who look like me in a town that didn't. And we were able to do some great things there. And then from there, it kind of took off. All the passions that I had from sports, all the lessons learned in sports early on, I was able to transfer those skills into organizations and stuff. And I had some great mentors to help develop those skill sets in the business and professional world, and also on the advocacy level. So, and then I finally got to academics, and I was able to kind of bridge all the two. And I had great mentors like Dr. Nelson Pichardo, who's a great friend of mine to this day, to help add that academic excellence to some of my social pursuits and equality and equity. So then I caught wind of the centers upstairs, like Center for Excellence in Leadership, Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. I know the name changed over time, but being involved in those centers back then, Dr. Jesse Nelson was the director, Mal Stuman was the director, Marion Leon, Lorinda Anderson. I mean, we had some great directors who helped mold service learning, and they helped me tie in all the different components of leadership into every aspect of my life. And then learning about Steve Farber and Greater Than Yourself, it helped develop me in that aspect. And then finally, last but certainly not least, meeting my wife at Central, and who really helped develop my relationship with Christ, and understanding the leadership principles and the way Jesus Christ lived, and how he had a life of servitude and it just helped tie in everything I was doing. So really, where I'm at today is attributed to a lot of my experiences at Central Washington University, both professionally and personally.
That's awesome to hear. I really enjoy hearing stories like this because it makes me have a little bit more hope for the future, because you sound like a great success story, that one of many from Central Washington University, you know? So it really gives me hope for the future. As Tommy mentioned earlier in this podcast, our theme is centered around foundations of leadership. And so one of the topics that we'd like to discuss today, just to kind of dive in a little bit more towards your journey throughout Central and into now in terms of leadership, is the values of leadership. What do you value in terms of leadership, and what helps you mold the foundation for your leadership style and what you think of as leadership?
Yeah, my foundations, again, going back to the greater than yourself, servitude has somewhat of this negative connotation, as in that you're lesser or inferior. But I look at servitude as never forgetting where you come from, and always, pouring back into the communities and who are maybe less fortunate, or because that just helps ground me. So servitude just helps ground me and keeps me at an even keel. So no matter where I go in life, no matter what formal position I have, no matter how much money I have, if I'm grounded in servitude, I will always stay humble. So like I said, the greater than yourself principles, being able to know yourself, to give yourself, to expand yourself with knowledge, and then replicate, who you are and the people that you serve. It all centers around that servitude piece. So that is basically the foundation of my leadership framework. But then also accountability equally. So I'm really focused on, if I say I'm going to do something, I need to get it done, and likewise, I just having that expectation as a leader. You want to be reliable, and you want to be, it's this corny dad joke thing that I say now, but I don't always tell people, but I tell my kids a lot too. I'm like a calculator. You can always count on me. Just being accountable, and being somebody who is a resource for people. So that again ties into servitude, being a resource for people. Another, huge aspect of leadership, which I think, gets overshadowed a lot, especially in the environment that we live in, but being consistent, being able to stand firm and, your beliefs but at the same time, being able to adapt to the changes that are around you. And I think with just being in a pandemic, and assuming this role as during a pandemic, it really tests your leadership framework. And so being consistent in how you process things, how you strategize, how you deal with issues is important. So I really try to be as consistent as possible. So, if something comes my way, I stop, analyze the situation, and then I'm able to look at all the factors around that situation, the pros and cons, and I'm able to assess it. Then I'm able to look at the long-term impacts of those things. So yeah, I'm really focused on servitude, accountability, and consistency.
Oh yeah, those are all really great traits to have. And I think one thing is, like, it's important to identify your values, but it's also more important to, go with your values, not be afraid to share your values,
Right.
Your values. And one thing is, in life, we're going to go through a lot of changes. We're going to go through we're going to have to be able to adapt. We're going to be open for new possibilities. But one thing I'm kind of curious about, what you're doing on this, is what are some ways to maintain your current the values that you already established? Like, what's one way you maintain your foundation?
Meditation and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the more I'm in that, the more, you know, there's conviction when I may be straying off. So that's one. And then also talking to, you know, older people, and older, I mean, in wisdom.
Yeah.
And just bouncing ideas off people who may be where I want to be. And in sharing my story, being transparent with people, and accepting their wisdom and feedback, you know, whether it be constructive criticism or they're just telling me how it is, you know, and just being open. So just being transparent, it has really helped me stay grounded in my beliefs, and ensuring that I don't get too far off the mark.
Yeah, and you say like seeking that wisdom. I feel like that's so important just as leadership and how you just are being open. Because I know for our director, Andre Dickerson, you mentioned him earlier, it's one thing he tells us in the office is like, if he needs to help make a decision, you know, for the office, for the good of the order, for anything, he doesn't just go himself. He seeks out people, he seeks out that he developed over time. As you said earlier, you know, building that community. He has his community. And I think that's one thing that's great about, like, I think for Aurelia and I, as we, you know, began working in this office, is that we started to build our community. We started to really focus on our values more, getting with like-minded individuals that we can, you know, use as, you know, outlets in the future as we, you know, progress in our careers.
That's right. Yeah, that's huge. Mm-hmm. You have to build a community, and then like, you know, as the saying goes, you know, if you feel like you are the wisest, smartest person in your circle, it might be time that you expand that circle or find a new one, you know, because yeah, you always want to be in a place where you're learning, you know, and accepting wisdom and feedback, because again, just circling back, without that, you start to transition from a place of humility to, you know, you become just self-centered, and you feel like you're a know-it-all, and that's not the case, you know. So being able to, you know, humble yourself, seek knowledge, seek wisdom, and recognize your faults, and seek help in addressing those. So
I really like what you're saying about finding community, because I know when I started my journey here at Central, community was essential, but that's something I wasn't exactly able to get my first and second year being here at Central. So in terms of going about just maintaining your foundation, how do you go and not find those people, but what do you do when you can't find those people? How do you maintain that sense of foundation and maintain your values when you feel like you're alone with your sense of self, I guess you could say, and your leadership? Like, you can't really find exactly who is within your community, but how can you depend on yourself is kind of what I'm asking in terms of maintaining your foundation.
Yeah, that's a huge question, because, you know, it's, people have their own, you know, challenges. People are busy, you know, especially as you get older, you have your own families, you know, and it may not be a personal thing. They just don't have the time, you know, especially when you feel like you may need them most. So again, just going back to the faith piece, you know, ensuring that, you know, I stay grounded in prayer and just reflection, and just to keep things together. But then also just going back to the sports piece and staying active. You know, I rely heavily on going to the gym, keeping my body physically active, because that's kind of the foundation of where I learned a lot of these principles from the first place, being able to, understand that my mind will do what my body tells it to do, so staying headstrong and understanding that, the pain and the issues that I go through are temporary, but the reward once I come out on the other side of it is going to be great. So, and just holding some of those principles that I learned from coaches, 20 years ago still remains true today. So sometimes I just have to go to that place, where I just have to work out and get through it, pray and get through it, and just put things in perspective that way. When there is nobody available, or when I can't find that community, I just go back to the things I learned a long time ago, so.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You can have your personal values, that's outside the office, and then you can also have your professional values for like your career. But it sounds like you kind of have a way of allowing them to kind of off of each other, so that it can just benefit you overall around in just every aspect of life. And it sounds like you kind of use your faith and your ability to work out to help you like progress yourself professionally as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I think it's important that your professional and personal values are aligned, because if not, you're going to constantly be in a duality state. With the type of job I have, I just don't have the energy to do that,
Yeah.
I have to be myself at all times, so because I carry, the tenets of OIC, the mission of OIC with me everywhere I go. So that's important first and foremost, and just in leadership, and finding your passion, making sure your passion aligns with your career choice, because you have to take off one hat and put on another. If you are fortunate to live in a country like we live in, we have the ability to choose what we want to do. So it was important to me to be able to find a job, find a industry where I can exercise my personal traits and personal passions, and also I can live out my truth, so to speak, and I'm able to in my industry. So that's critical to leadership, or else you're going to feel like an imposter. You're going to feel that you're fake. So as students are developing, what they want to do in life, I think that it's important to include, your personality, your leadership framework, and consider whether or not you're going to be able to exercise that in your job field. If not, you may want to consider a different industry.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you said right now really just resonated with me. You said living your truth. And I feel like that's something so important when we're discussing foundations of leadership. Do you have a specific experience maybe that you can share with us in terms of a time where you maybe didn't feel like you were living your truth, and how that kind of impacted how you viewed yourself or your leadership at all?
Yeah, especially working when I was working kind of in a for-profit industry, when it was kind of just chasing numbers, chasing commissions, and this was in the real estate world, and this was actually at Central Washington when I was working at the Grove apartment community. I don't know if the Grove is still up and going, but
oh, it's the Verge now.
Oh, okay, yeah, but yeah, it was the way things were managed is you had to get a certain number of referrals, and then you get bonuses and stuff. It was kind of like a dog eat dog, like it was, but it was kind of like the old school mentality of a car dealership model, and people are taking other people's referrals, and it. But at that point, I realized that is just not how I want to, live life, backbiting, just playing games all the time, playing politics, for, developing false relationships, doing stuff like that really, that's a time where I felt like I kind of was falling off the the deep end. I was chasing money, chasing these facades instead of understanding the purpose of why I was there. And it wasn't to just, you know, get money. It wasn't to try to meet these unsurmountable goals. You know, it really took me in a place I didn't want to go. So at that time I realized, like, I don't want to work in an environment where it's strictly based off competition. You know, I'm a firm believer in competition, being in sports and stuff, but I'm also a firm believer in sportsmanship. You know, competing within the lines of play, you know, within the rules and stuff. So that was a time, I guess, early on when I realized, you know what, that might not be the industry for me, because in that regard, I can let my competition be going a negative way instead of, I can let my competitive spirit have a negative influence over me rather than a positive influence. So, and I learned that was probably like 20, 21. I realized I wanted to go in the industry of helping people, because if I'm competitive about getting people services, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
If I'm competitive and want, you know, my agency to be the top tier agency in the community, living out its mission, going out and meeting the needs of our communities and being, I knew that it was a win-win. So that's why I decided to go in the social services, nonprofit management sector.
Oh yeah, that's very important. I'm sure your community appreciates all of the work that you've been able to do. And one thing I like that you said earlier too was just like, as a leader, you really just want to be yourself. You want to be authentic. You don't want to be putting on an act for anyone, you know, because, you know, people you're leading, you know, that you're serving, they can honestly read that. They can see, sugarcoating it a little too much when your ideas are too big. And you brought up too accountability. You know, if I tell you something, I'm gonna do it, or vice versa. So I just think those are very, very important values that you mentioned. So I have a question about what sort of advice would you give young students coming into Central, like as they're trying to start their journey and develop as leaders?
One, don't sell yourself short. If you are passionate about going into business, go into business. Do not allow yourself to be pigeonholed into a industry that may be considered a better fit for you when somebody else is giving you that advice. If you have it in your heart that you want to be a doctor, put in the work, seek the mentorship. It may be outside of Central Washington. It may be outside the little community of Ellensburg, but social media has expanded, given us so much access to people across the world. Your mentors may not be within the Task County. You know, seek mentors that may look like you, that be from the same place that you're from, that's doing all the things that you aspire to do. But do not sell yourself short and take one class and then say, hey, I realize this is not for me based on the difficulty of the class. You know, give it a second thought. Do some job shadows. I wish I would have done job shadows, because you have this perception of a career that you want to go into. Then you take a class, it might be entry level class, and then the class you're going through a bunch of theory, you know, history of the history, and you're like, nah, this is boring, without even having the experience in the real world. That is, I think, a huge mistake. So oftentimes, I think we have it backwards. We do the internship at the end of our journey in college, when actually it should be done in the beginning. I want to see what the industry's like before I declare a major,
Yeah.
So I think if you have it in your heart to do something, get the experience in that industry, and then push through the book work.
Yeah, like you said too.
That's some really great advice.
Yeah, for sure. And like seeking those relationships to build your community, as you said, like Wildcats, like you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Facebook, you can find anything, just try to find people who will help guide you on your path, and you will reward yourself for it.
Right. I mean, there's just to piggyback, there's some great people, and who are working at Central Washington. I mean, they helped guide me and stuff. But again, many of them have goals that they have to achieve. They have, because that's their profession. So just keep that in mind, when you're seeking advice about what majors do declare to counselors and stuff. And, they have goals that they have to achieve. They have, all these different objectives that they must meet. So you are one of those objectives. So if you're struggling in a class and it maybe seem too hard, the easy answer may be, hey, have you thought about this other major? This may be a good fit for you. This may reduce the academic burden so you can do other things. But really, is that the best for you? You want somebody who's going to say, hold up, let's look at your time. What are you doing? Are you hanging out too much? Then you need to change that. You want somebody to give you that tough love. And so, and oftentimes that tough love comes outside of the university.
Yeah, I was about to ask, because I know we gear a lot of our conversations towards maybe the freshmen and sophomore Wildcats that are still declaring their majors, and they have all of these leadership opportunities at their disposal, seeing that the second level of the circ is literally dedicated for stuff like this. Right. But in terms of those older Wildcats, so those who are about to graduate, how would you recommend them going about their foundation of leadership, how they can expand their horizon beyond the mentors and peers that they created here? Because once they leave, for the most part, yeah, you can stay connected, but everyone is on a different schedule now. It's not going to be the same as it once was. We have to actually go out and find these leadership. They're not just going to be hanging out on the second floor,
Right. Well, I think it really behooves, the leaders of the second floor to help make those connections, like what you're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Just interviewing, alumni, who have been able to, go through the system and come out on the other side somewhat successful. But then the next step is, hey, Anthony, don't just expect this to be a one-time interview. We might have some people interested in nonprofit leadership. Will you be available as a resource? Then, making those connections, building that bridge, with those individuals, and keeping those pipelines open so that relationship is started prior to them leaving this place. So I think that will help. And then also just telling them look, you're an adult now. You're gonna have, you're gonna have to go seek people out, and that's just the way it is. So,
yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, and go Cats, and I believe in all of you, and go change the world.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. Wildcats, if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear more, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, or YouTube at Word to the Wildcat.
And if you're interested in any other programs that the CLC has to offer, please make sure to check out our website at cwu.presence.io and follow our social media pages.
And also remember, for just simply listening to us today, you can receive credit towards earning your Wildcat Leadership Academy certificate by filling out a quick assessment. And you can learn more at the CLC website that I really just mentioned. And with that being said, please join us again next time. I'm Tommy.
I'm Aurelie, and this has been Word to the Wildcat.
Thank you.